how do you go from that to wanting to do politics?
Politics, the only game left for grown-ups. And there's that competition.
Why does nobody trust Congress today?
The left tells a lie, big media reports the lie, big tech amplifies the lie, and then when you tell the truth, they call you a racist. Every one of our liberties under the First Amendment was assaulted by the government, the Biden-Harris administration. Every single one.
Who can Trump fire? Who can he not fire?
Come in, fire everyone you're allowed to fire. And then, frankly, fire a few people you're not allowed to fire. To send a message like there is a new sheriff back in town.
Who is the leader or the leaders of the swamp? You've been in it.
That's one of the few times I really actually got mad at the witness. So
I don't look at this as a liberty thing, Congressman Jordan. Well, that's obvious.
He and I have a secret. We'll tell you what it is when the race is over.
I mean, that's how the founders envisioned it.
That makes a lot of sense to me.
Put the sticker on his doorbell cam so they couldn't see. 58 seconds later, he is dead.
Is this not criminal?
It's troubling.
Did you ever think you would make it? I feel I'm so close I could taste sweet victory. I know this life meant for me. Yeah, why would you bet on Goliath when we got Bet David? Valuetainment, giving values contagious. This world of entrepreneurs, we get no value to haters. How they run, homie, look what I become. I'm the one.
We have an interesting guest in the house today. We have a United States representative, none other than Jim Jordan, who happens to be a two-time NCAA national champion wrestler, former college coach for wrestling. And the more I'm going into this, competitive in that area, record 156-1, and you won state championship all 4 years in high school with a record of 156-1, which is pretty impressive. And then, decides to go into politics. Becomes 9-0 as a House of Representatives. We got to talk about that because I'm curious to know what your thoughts are on term limits because I want to see what you'll say about that. And then gets married to a competitor's sister, if I'm not mistaken.
Wow.
But I want to know that story. The brothers made. Was it your brother introducing you, or how that took place with teammate? And you guys got married. You guys got 4 kids, and some of the most fiery interviews, fiery things that we see is you fighting somebody else, and you're always up there doing your thing. So it's great to have you on the podcast.
Good to be with you. Thanks for all the good work you do. We, my boys are big fans, and I watched some of your clips here lately. But it's great to be with someone who's getting truth and facts and information out to the American people, and all the good work you've done. So and the service to our country. So
I appreciate
thanks for having
that.
us.
Thank you. Likewise, because first of all, how do you go from 2-time state champion? And 4-time, in your high school undefeated. How do you go from that to wanting to do politics?
Well, I was at a point. I was assistant coach at Ohio State, and so I was at a point where I did that for 8 years. And at some point, it's kind of time to go try to be a head coach in the Big Ten or do something else. And I was looking for something new to compete at. I mean, we were just talking about how you love competition, and same here. And frankly, when you know how it is, you get married, you have kids. You suddenly start looking at the world different. You get tired of government taking your money and telling you what to do and insulting your values. And so I decided to run. The state rep, the local in our General Assembly in Ohio, the state rep had announced he was going to retire. And I'd never been in politics, never run for anything. I was 29-year-old, Joe Bag of Donuts, never been in politics. And I think I'm going to run for state rep. And I still remember going and talking to the heads of the party, because where I'm from, it's all about winning the Republican primary. So I still remember going and talking to the folks and saying, I'm thinking about running for state rep. And they basically said, well, you're a nice young guy, because I was young back then. They said, you're a nice young guy, but this 2-term county commissioner is running, and he's the favorite, and yada yada. And I politely said, they basically said, you can't win. And I politely said, we'll see, right? That's why they kicked the ball off on Friday night. You got to play the game, so who's going to win. And we had a bunch of good people help us out, knocking on doors. I mean, we were knocking doors every weekend, and we wound up winning 70-30, which in politics is a complete smack. It was just like so I've been in politics ever since. 30 years, 1994.
30 years in it. Yeah. Still love it as much as you did day one?
I do like. I like it when the part I like the best is when I think there's a guy on the witness stand who I get the opportunity to cross-examine in one of these hearings, if I think that guy hasn't been square with the people, particularly the people I represent in the 4th District of Ohio, but frankly, the American people. And it's my job to highlight that and demonstrate that and try to improve how the bureaucracy is going to operate for how the government's going to operate for the American people. So I like the competition part.
I mean, I see some of this stuff like weaponization of the federal government. You've gone against FBI, CDC, DOJ, all these guys, Hunter Biden, the handling of the classified documents, Fauci, ESG, all of these things you've gone up against. It seems like that's what drives you when you see some of the correcting the injustice that's taking place. That's when you get fired up and you want to compete and get in there. And again, it's entertaining to watch because some of this stuff with politics, you need fighters. I was thinking you were going to be the Speaker of the House. You know, Kevin and I have spoken multiple times.
Yeah,
we had him on.
I like Kevin.
I enjoy talking to Kevin, and I know you guys are friends.
Yeah.
But I thought for a moment, I'm like, you know what? Is he? And I think there was a moment for about a week or two where you were the one in the talks that could be the Speaker of the House, and then it went a different direction, and then Johnson, and then obviously it never happened. But how close was it to you being a Speaker?
Well, I mean, I got the nomination after with Kevin. We had the 8 guys that got rid of Kevin, which was a mistake, and then we had the ballots, and I ultimately get nominated. But there was a handful of guys that just weren't going to vote for me. And after 3 rounds, remember Kevin went 15.
I remember that.
And
crazy.
I remember I nominated in the second round. But after 3 rounds, I just saw that it wasn't going to happen. So I went to the conference and basically said, "Okay, we can have a secret ballot vote. Do you still want me as your nominee, or do you want to move on?" Because I didn't feel like it was appropriate to keep making my colleagues do it on. But there were a handful of folks who just. I think most of them kind of dealt with the Appropriations Committee, but there was a handful who didn't want to do it. But look, right now we're focused on we got 7 days to win this thing, and I think we can win all 3. I think President Trump's going to win. I do feel like we're going to win the Senate. I think Marino's going to win in Ohio. We've been campaigning with him. I like McCormick in Pennsylvania. We've done a lot of. He's an old wrestling guy. He was captain at West Point. In fact, he called me up. Ratcliffe called me. John, who was a colleague of mine that worked for the President Trump, called me like a year and a half, 2 years ago and said, "Hey, McCormick would like to talk to you." I said, "Well, fine. I'm happy to talk to him." And so he calls me up. We start talking, and he says, "Hey, I wrestled. I was state champ Pennsylvania, was captain of the team at West Point." I'm like, "Well, why didn't you tell me that?" I said, "I'd have been for you last time if I'd have known that." He's a great guy.
That's cool.
I think he's going to win. So I think we're going to win the Senate. I think we're going to keep the House. So all good.
So now it's going to be interesting to see if this is like how in 2022 they said, "Well, there's going to be a red wave all this," and then boom, everybody was shocked. Oh shit, there is no red wave. So I'm curious to know what's going to happen, whether it'll happen this time or not. But I'm going to tell you a funny story. Then I got a bunch of things I want to go into with you. I'm in the Army.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm 6'4". At the time, I'm 6'4", 6'4.5", and 225 pounds.
Yeah.
And 7-8% body fat.
Yeah, you're ripped. Yeah.
I am ripped. I look good. Rob, pull up a picture. I can brag about what I used to look like at 18. And I feel good. Like if I'm fighting, if I'm wrestling, if I'm doing what I'm doing, I'm feeling good about myself, okay? That's the one right there. If you go to the second picture, Rob, the one that's me in the Army. That's actually in the barracks.
Dang.
That's me 19 years old in the barracks, okay?
Yeah.
And
you should have wrestled.
Well,
Holy
let me
cow.
tell you what happened. I didn't wrestle. So we're in boot camp, and we got 100 kids around, and everybody's coming in. We're fighting each other. And then this one kid comes to me. He's probably 5'6", 5'7", but I'm going to say 130 pounds. And he says, "Look, let me try." This is me, by the way. He says, "Let me try you." And I said, "You want to try me?" I said, "Look, I don't want to hurt you, honestly. This is not fair to you."
Yeah.
That's me 14 on the left. That's me 19 in the right. Yeah.
Look at that.
So we start. I said, "I don't want to do this to you. There's people here I don't want to embarrass." He said, "No, don't worry about embarrassing me. I've got a thick skin." I'm like, "I'm telling you, I don't want to do it." He said, "Just give me a shot." Jim, I'm not even kidding.
I know what you're
in
gonna say.
6 seconds, I'm begging him to stop. And he does it with a smile on his face.
Yeah, that's so
so
funny.
I'm like, "Dude, what is stop?" And I'm like, "What's the matter with you?" He says, "Well, listen, I'm pretty good at it." He says, "Why are you so good?" He says, "I was a state champion in Florida or Ohio, one of these states." So you should have told me something. Like, "Well, you were enjoying yourself too much. I wanted to surprise you." But that's the thing with wrestlers sometimes, because you can never tell. And then all of a sudden you're like,
Unless they got the ear.
Unless they got the ear, which is when you see the ear, it's a good signal to say, "How are you, sir?"
Yeah.
Maybe
you're
the
kind.
approach changes a
You're
little
kind.
bit.
I wouldn't mess with you when you're built like that.
But-
It's funny because we were this a couple years ago, and I was campaigning, helping a colleague in New Mexico. We're in El Paso, time change, late at night, And Polly's sleeping, I'm up, I can't sleep, and I'm clicking through ESPN, I'm on there, and they're doing how Dana does the preview of the big fight coming up. It's like the week before, and so they're previewing how they train.
Sure.
And it was Khabib's protege, I forget the guy's name, he's the tough, in same weight class as Khabib.
Khamzat or?
Ishmael, something like that. I forget. Anyway, they're showing him training, and then they're showing the guy from Brazil. So this is a couple years ago, and it's the big fight. And they show how they train and all. And it was funny because I'm watching it, and it's like the Brazilians that's a different kind of.
Is he the stocky, shorter guy?
The Khabib guy is the guy from Dagestan, who Khabib was training. And then the guy from Brazil was the longer, lankier Brazilian style, and they showed him training. But it was funny because the guys from the Dagestan group, they start with the wrestling base, and it showed them in the room training. I was like, that's exactly how our boys were training with my brother, and they're shooting across the mat and different things. And I just watched the whole thing, and I thought, and I said, I think the wrestling guy, the guy started with the wrestling base, the Khabib guy is going to win. Sure enough, the next week he beat him. He beat him in I didn't get to see the fight, but it was funny because I said, who won that fight? And my boys were telling me so. There's some of that wrestling background.
It's a different thing with the wrestling side, right? It's a different skill set. But let's get right into it. So questions for you. Politics, Congress, 9 terms. You've been in there, right?
Yeah.
When you look at approval rating right now in America, lowest we've ever had in mainstream media. Americans don't trust mainstream media. Mm-hmm. It's 23, 24, 27, give or take. Number just came out from Gallup. It's the worst it's ever been. What is it right now? Anyways, it's the lowest it's ever been. Whatever the number is, it's the lowest it's ever been. Then when you look at trust in the U.S. government, again, low in the 20s, 27, lowest it's ever been. You see approval rating for Kamala Harris. You see approval rating for Trump. You see approval rating for Biden. You see all these approval ratings we hear about. Do you know the lowest approval rating in America right now is Congress, 16%. Why does nobody trust Congress today? Left, right, center, 16% is terrible. How do we get there?
Yeah, I think it's Congress is disappointing the American people. There's I always joke and say, if you remember that movie 1776, the opening scene, John Adams is up in the bell tower, and the clerk calls him, Mr. Adams, and he comes walking down, and he walks in there at Independence Hall where they're getting ready to debate and put together the Declaration of Independence, and he walks in. The opening line of the movie, he says, "One useless man is a disgrace. 2 are a law firm, and 3 or more are a Congress, and I've had it with this Congress." So I think it might have been there
2
from
are lawyers, 3 is our Congress.
Yeah. One useless man disgrace, 2 are a law firm, and 3 or more are Congress. So I think it might have been there from the get go. It's like a frustrating body where you got to debate, and then of course this past Congress, it's kind of fit what Adams described. Now what's interesting is, of course, no one likes Congress, but they all like their congressman. Or no one likes Congress, or like the Congresswoman. Because the reelection rate is huge for incumbents. But it is frustrating, and frankly, I think part of the problem too is when the founders set up this great experiment in liberty, the greatest country ever, 3 separate and equal branches of government. If there was one branch that was supposed to be a little more equal than the other, it was supposed to be the legislative branch. And in particular, the House of Representatives, because that's the body that's closest to the people. Every 2 years, voters get a chance to throw me out. I tell them all the time, that's a good thing. Keeps me honest, keeps me coming back talking to the voters. I get the privilege of representing. So it was supposed to be the one, and that's why under our Constitution, all spending and taxing has to originate in the House of Representatives, the body that every 2 years has to go in front of the people. What I think we've allowed to happen over the last several decades is the executive branch, the presidency, has now become the more dominant branch of government. And we need to reassert our authority, particularly when it comes to the power of the purse, and say, wait a minute, we're not going to let the executive branch run all over us. And in particular, these huge bureaucracies that tend to run our lives via rule and everything else. And of course, the best example of someone who's never been elected, who ran our lives for 3.5 years, is Dr. Fauci. Fauci, 40 years in the government, highest paid official in the government, literally ran the country for 3 years and violated our liberties. I tell folks every time I give it, I'll say it tonight when I'm speaking to the group tonight. Every one of our liberties under the First Amendment was assaulted by the government in the Biden-Harris administration. Every single one. I mean, 5 rights we have: our right to practice our faith, our right to assemble, right to petition the government, free press, free speech, every single one. They told Americans during COVID, you can't go to church on Sunday. In America? That is just wrong. And then I tell people, I spoke a couple years ago, the New Mexico Republican Party in Amarillo, Texas, because they had to go to Texas to get the freedom to assemble. Their Democrat governor wouldn't let them get together in their own state where they pay taxes. And you can just but the scariest one of all is what they're doing to the First Amendment, free speech, where they're telling Americans, you can't say certain things, you can't tweet certain things, you can't post certain things. Like, what in America? Think about this. Did you ever think we would have Donald Trump, Elon Musk, RFK Jr., and Tulsi Gabbard on the same team? And they are, because of this free speech thing. So I don't know even how we got all of this from. But I do think Congress needs to reassert its authority against these bureaucrats who run our lives, who never put their name on the ballot. Maybe if we did that, maybe the country we'd go from 16% approval rating at least up to 17%.
I guess my question would be, to follow up on that part, is when you ask a question about did I ever think Elon Musk, Trump, Tulsi, RFK, all these guys, about a year and a half ago when Tucker got fired from Fox, I think in April or May, and I saw a meeting that was had with Tucker went to Musk to do Twitter, and he said he's taking a show on Twitter, and the first show came out, and we're like, whoa. And then, it was like, oh my God. I said, I think there's an alliance being created with Elon, Tucker, and
great point.
And Trump. It's like, what are you talking about? I said, I think there's an alliance being made between these 3 guys. Something's going on there. And then when Bobby started going on all these podcasts, and he's going, I had him on early in COVID, 2020, 2021. I had him one time. Him and Dershowitz were debating each other. It was great.
Yeah.
And I said, Bobby's willing to go everywhere. He's going to do something. Then he got the independent vote. And then Trump is able to bring him in. Then Tulsi, she's being bullied around by Hillary. She's a Russian asset. She's this. Like, what are you doing? She's actually very formidable. It was insulting where they don't know how to keep talent. Like, it's almost as if certain companies, you're a coach. Phil Jackson knew how to deal with big egos. Mm-hmm. He know how to deal with Michael. He know how to deal with Rodman. He know how to deal with Scotty. He know how to deal with Kobe. He know how to deal with Shaq. That's a skill set. It's as if the Democratic Party had a lot of these talents. They just don't know how to keep Elon. They don't know how to keep Rogan. They don't know how to keep RFK. They don't know how to keep Tulsi. So they keep losing talent. How do you lose all this great talent that's leaving you going elsewhere? That just means there's not good leadership there. But going back to it. So in free enterprise, free market, if approval rating is not high, you get fired. You've been in it for 9 terms, right? And you hear term limits all the time. Mm-hmm. One, what's your position with term limits?
I'm actually for, look, I've been in office for, different offices now, state rep, state senate, and Congress, 30 years. But I actually supported the effort when it was in our state back in 1992. We went to the ballot in Ohio to limit the terms, and we passed it for State House, State Senate, and for United States Congress. The Supreme Court said, okay, you can keep it Ohio for State House and State Senate, but Congress you can't, because other states have got different things, and we can't have that unequal amongst the states there. So I like that. I think newer, fresher people is typically a good thing. On balance, I think it's a good thing. You're going to lose some good people, but I'm for it. So if we ever enact it, I'll abide by it when it happens. But
how many are your friends? How many total people in Congress? What's the number?
I bet it's not a majority.
How many people would be for it?
Yeah, it's not. It'd be less. It wouldn't be enough to pass. I don't think.
Less than 10%.
No, it'd be more than that. There's a number of conservatives who'd support it, and it would. I think it's important to be equal to the Senate. So I think you'd probably have to go 12 and 12. You get 6 terms in the House, 2 terms in the Senate, 12 and 12. If you do that, and of course we've had term limits on the president now for since FDR.
Okay, so let me ask you the question. Okay, so let's just say I come to you and I say, Jim, cameras off, phones off. I just want to have a conversation with you. I'm thinking about running for office. Okay,
great.
And here's some of the things. I would like to have an outlandish campaign to come out, like, hey, build a wall or do this. Not some basic stuff that everybody keeps talking about, repeating, you're like everybody else. I don't want to be Me Too. I want to come out with a new campaign.
Right.
Okay. So, one, only 2 countries in the world big pharma can advertise in, okay, on TV, mainstream media. You got U.S. and New Zealand. That's one. I'd like to eliminate them from them being able to advertise on national television and allow doctors to do their job to make the prescription instead of them buying TV ads, right? Pfizer paying guys $20 million. The other day I saw John Legend with a Pfizer ad for COVID shot. It's been 4 years. Yeah. Can you find out how much John Legend got paid for the COVID shot? I know Kelsey got $20 million. I don't know what John Legend. We can probably find that out and see what the number is. But I want to eliminate that. I don't want John Legend telling me to take a COVID shot. No, get out of here. I don't want to watch you. Go play your music. Your music will play at many different weddings. I don't want you to be a doctor coming up telling me why we should take the COVID shot because of you. Okay. So number one is big pharma outside of advertising.
Yeah.
2 is term limits. I want to run on term limits, and I want to get that done. Impossibility.
Yeah.
3, I want to run on, we're going to take Fauci down, and we're going to investigate everything that happened. Okay,
I like that.
We're going to find out exactly what happened. Number 4, I want to hold China accountable because everybody's forgotten about what happened with China with the release of the virus. We haven't been able to do that. If there's got to be an element of reparations that they did for the world to stop, for the amount of months that they stopped, the millions of restaurants, jobs that was lost, the $50 million in the hospitality business industry that we lost, the 100,000 restaurants that shut down, whatever the numbers, 50 to 100,000. These are family-owned businesses that were shut down. If I told you one of those 4 I want to run on and add flat taxes to it, tell me which one's the most likely that you can get it done to the least likely of getting it done.
Well, first of all, the term limits requires a constitutional amendment. So that's a long process to amend our Constitution. So that's tough. The first one was on limiting advertising.
Big pharma.
Yeah, you may have a chance with that. I think it's difficult, and of course you'd have the pharmaceutical industry, working against you. Yeah, of course. And then going after Fauci, I think the country's with you. Country remembers. I'm certainly with you. I've been going after that guy for. I still remember one time when he was in front of the hearing. I think I asked him this question like 100 times in 5 minutes. When do we get our liberty back? What measure? What metric? What has to happen before Americans get their First Amendment rights back? And he just like it was. I got. That's one of the few times I really actually got mad at the witness. So I'm all for doing that one. Now, as far as any crime or anything, I don't know that that's there, but that would obviously be up to the Justice Department. And then on China, I think that is critically important. You want to go specifically regarding COVID, but in a general sense, we understand China. We got to beat them in AI. That's the competition out there.
I'm talking reparations.
Yeah.
You stopped the world. You released the virus. You were irresponsible because of you. This is how much the world lost on what you did. All these families that have history, relationship, we have to hold you accountable. So
remember, you couldn't even say that.
I know you couldn't even say that. I know.
That's the censorship stuff.
So right here, based on this, would you say term limits is the hardest one because it's long term?
Yeah, because it requires a constitutional amendment.
Okay. Would you put Big Pharma, Fauci, China, flat tax? Which one would you put as the second toughest one? Flat tax, China, holding Fauci accountable, Big Pharma.
I don't. The flat tax is. We all like that simple tax system. That concept better. We're gonna do tax reform if we win everything like I think we're going to. Obviously, the tax cuts that we put in place back in 2017 with President Trump are up for reauthorization. So we have to get that done in 25 next year. So you could do maybe something in a flatter way, but a clean flat tax probably be tough. But you can. We're definitely going to do tax reform. We get the majority. We're going to use this. The fancy term is reconciliation, but it's a fancy term to avoid the 60-vote hurdle in the Senate. We will use that approach to get tax reform done and tax cuts done and reauthorize most of what happened in 17, which was so good for the economy. So that's certainly part of that's possible. The others I think are pretty tough as well.
Got it. So you're saying so you're not thinking the big pharma thing's going to be tough to do?
No, it would be. I just know the way the lobbying thing works, and I'm not on the Energy and Commerce Committee. What some of these committees do. I'm on the committees where we're always in a debate and doing an investigation and judiciary and oversight. But the better answer would come from them. But I think there's probably a possibility that happens.
Got it. Yeah,
but you got to run first.
No, I'm not born here, so I can't run. You would have to create some amendments for me to be able to run.
Yeah. I don't. Well, you're a citizen, right?
I'm a U.S. citizen.
Well, of course. So you can run for Congress. You want to run for president?
If there was any, like, I'm not, because for me right now, what we're building, we're growing rapidly business-wise, company. I enjoy capitalism. I enjoy the free market. It's easy to compete. I know if I'm going to lose here, I'm going to win here. This is the dollar amount. It's very transactional. It's easier. Politics, Eric Trump was here last week, and he says, in politics, at least in business, you know if you're going to get a better deal or not because there's dollars involved. Both people want to build this hotel. Both people want to make this company work. Both people want to make the money. Politics, it's a different game.
Yes, I get it, but as we talked earlier, there's a competitive aspect to it too. I think it was one
agree.
of the. I think it was. I may be wrong on this, but I think it was one of the Kennedys. And maybe I'm wrong, but someone once said, one of the Kennedys, I think, said, politics the only game left for grown-ups. And there's that competition. And I like it because I'm fighting for the folks back home, the families, taxpayers, communities I get the privilege of representing. And but there is that competition component that I think is important too. In the history of the country, this is, I think, amazing about this country. In the history of this country, only about 12,000 people have ever served in the United States Congress. It is a privilege. It is an honor. And I try to remember that. And when I go there, it's like, okay, my job is to fight for the folks back home. Now, I think about this. I even said this to Fauci in one of the times I was cross-examining him in a hearing, that my job is to fight for those folks back home. And they want an answer to why their liberty has been restrained because of you. And when is it going to end? And so, but it is a privilege. And I know you're doing great and all you do here, but you should run for Congress.
I am so interested in your world. Trust me, I am very interested in your world. A guy like Elon, you see how Elon's being involved right now. So do you think, even at a level from your perspective where you're at, because, you're Congress, you're not going to be around for 2 years, 4 years. You can be around for as long as you want. You can be around for the next 20 years if you wanted. It's purely on you to decide to step away. Who is more powerful in your eyes, a Trump or a Musk?
Well, both are extremely powerful. But I mean, President Trump has transformed the party. He's the leader. We are now, and this is a good thing, we are now a populist party rooted in conservative principle. And that last part's really important. You can't just be pure populist. But we are a much more populist party, much more working class, middle class party rooted in conservative principles. President Trump has brought that about. What I think Elon has really done has focused in on this idea of protecting liberty, protecting First Amendment free speech rights, and he's just been powerful in that regard. I called him up because I had talked to Elon a few times with Kevin, and we had one of those meetings with Kevin. I still remember Elon Musk telling me, he used the term, he said, GARM is harm, and GARM is this, you guys might deal with them, Global Alliance for Responsible Media. And basically, they kind of coordinate together to say, oh, you shouldn't advertise your product on this particular podcast, this particular website, this particular platform, because it could be a reputational risk to your brand. And he said, that, and basically what they do is they were saying, don't advertise on anything conservative. Breitbart, Federalist, Twitter, don't do that. And I still remember when Elon said GARM is harm. We started investigating, found that it was exactly like he described it. Long story short, because of our investigation, GARM went out of business. They're no longer operating because we felt like it was almost an antitrust violation. That's from the Judiciary Committee's perspective. That's why we looked into them. So, what Elon's done on helping us and RFK Jr. too. By the way, when I talked with RFK Jr. a few weeks back when he endorsed President Trump, I called him up to thank him. And we started laughing because you had him on your show, but I invited him in as a witness. And I told him I invited him, Tulsi, the Schellenberger and Taibbi, the Twitter Files guys. And I told Elon, I probably invited more Democrats in as a witness than any Republican chairman I know. I mean, I said, I took some heat when I invited you in a year and a half ago because, Democrat candidate named Kennedy running for president. But I joked with him. I said, but we kind of look like geniuses now that this coalition's coming together. But by the way, in that hearing, now think about this issue in the Democrat Party. In that hearing, one of the Democrats, RFK Jr.'s testified, one of the Democrats, I think it was Debbie Wasserman Schultz, I need to double check that, but I think it was her, made a motion to go to executive session, which means you kick everyone out and no cameras, no citizens can see what their government's up to that day in that particular congressional hearing. So she made a motion to not let people see what RFK Jr. was going to testify to in a hearing on censorship. Think about that. And I'm like, his name is Kennedy. It's the most well-known name in Democrat politics for the last 3/4 of a century. And Democrats are trying to kick him out, not let anyone hear what he has to say. So you talk about they're the party of censorship. They certainly are. We're the party of defending the First Amendment. It's crazy. But RFK Jr. said something at that hearing that he said when he endorsed President Trump. And I've never forgotten it. And I told him this on the phone. I said, when you testified in the hearing, you said, when you look at history, it is never the good guys who are for censorship. It is always the bad guys. And that is so true. And I think Americans are seeing through this. And this is there was a survey last week where number one issue is inflation, number two issue, First Amendment, protecting the First Amendment. Ahead of the border, ahead of other issues.
I saw that.
And I was like, holy cow,
Yeah,
that's amazing.
I saw that. So Elon even tweeted that out to show what the number was about. We talked about it on the podcast. But Fauci, the Fauci we see, you've spent more time with them. You've had time with them one-on-one, your fights. Rob, do you have a clip of one of the fights? Let's post one of these to remind people, because a lot of time when time goes by, we forget how nasty things were during COVID.
Yeah.
Go ahead and play this clip.
That call would have been on the call.
Well, the call was arranged by Jeremy Farrar. You should ask him.
Okay. Did U.S. tax dollars flow through a grant recipient to the lab in China?
I'm sorry. What was?
Did U.S. tax dollars flow through a grant recipient to the lab in China?
Yes, of course. It was a sub-award to the Wuhan Institute.
And who approved that award?
Excuse me?
And who approved that award? What agency approved that award?
National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases.
Your agency approved that, right?
Yes, it did after.
Did that have anything to do with this downplaying of the lab leak theory?
No.
Nothing to do with it?
Nothing.
What prior to that?
That is wild. While we're going through that, right?
Yeah.
And you're hearing that being said. What was the other one that you guys said that was a fiery one?
Oh, this was back during COVID where I actually had to, I think, wear the mask. It was one where he...
you had a mask on?
He said I was... what did he say?
Is this the one?
I lost it, one of these. It may be.
Continue this forever, or when do we get to the point? What measure, what standard, what objective outcome do we have to reach before Americans get their liberty and freedoms back?
You know, you're indicating liberty and freedom. I look at it as a public health measure to prevent people from dying and going to the hospital.
You don't think Americans' liberties have been threatened the last year, Dr. Fauci? They've been assaulted. Their liberties have.
I don't look at this as a liberty thing, Congressman Jordan.
Well, that's obvious.
As a public health thing.
Are we just...
So how different is he behind closed doors when the cameras are off than when he's being held accountable with the cameras there?
I mean, my assessment is he's pretty arrogant all the time. Is sort of. I mean, I was actually in part of the deposition with him too when the select committee deposed him. He was obviously a little more friendly back there in that situation, but he just, the thing I look at is everything he told us turned out to be false. Everything. They initially told us, oh, no, it wasn't gain-of-function research done at the lab in China. Sure looks like it was. They told us it wasn't our tax money used at the lab in China. Yes, it was. They told us it didn't come from the lab. No, it didn't come from the lab. It was a bat to a pangolin to a hippopotamus to, we all get, then they said the vaccinated can't get it. The vaccinated can't transmit it. They said mask worked. They said 6 feet social distance was based on science. And then the kicker was when they told us, oh, this is the first virus in history where there's no such thing as natural immunity. He was 0 for 8. Right, eight things he told us that were false, and meanwhile he's telling us all these false things. And you can't go outside in certain states without a mask on. If you walk your dog after 10 o'clock, you're going to get a ticket. Tim Walz was telling people to snitch on their neighbor. Like, what is that? Based on all this stuff that we got from this guy who's paid $400-some thousand by the taxpayers, who's worked for the taxpayers been in government for over 40 years. It just was frustrating too.
But then the question becomes, okay, so you say that, right? To me, Americans are very quick to move on. Look how they forgot about it. You forgot that your kids didn't go to school for a year and a half, and little kids, 2-3-year-old kids had masks on, couldn't breathe, and the teachers will put it back on. Or on flights, your kid can't put the mask on, you got to get off the flight. Dude, the kid doesn't want to put the mask on camera. You got to get him off the flight. What are you talking about? My kid doesn't want... Moms are screaming, crying, the chaos, the power trip that these airlines had.
Yeah.
So then I sit there and I think, why is Congress at 16%? Is it because nobody ever gets held accountable? Is it because, what is the level? Like, imagine for the people that are still not over it. They're still kind of like, okay, how old is this guy right now? Is he 82 or 81? What's his age? He's 83 years old. What's his age? 83 years old. born on the same day as my mother, by the way. Pretty interesting. Except she's not 1940. She's a little bit after that. She's Christmas Eve. Is this guy ever going to be held accountable, Jim?
It's probably the question I get. Sometimes they're even more direct. They're like, when is someone going to jail, Jordan? I mean, it's like, and all we can do, and it's a frustrating, but it's the truth. All we can do in Congress, in the legislative branch, is do our duty of oversight, get the facts to the American people. Then we can do referrals. If we think someone is guilty of criminal conduct, we can refer them to the Justice Department. But that, if that goes anywhere, depends on Merrick Garland and the folks at the Justice Department. We can also propose legislation that would help, fix something or do that. We're the legislative body, but we can't prosecute or indict anyone, and it's frustrating for the American people. But that's where we. So what we try to do is get the facts out. Now, sometimes just the facts will make a difference. I use the example all the time. Remember 2 years ago, if you remember when the Department of Homeland Security was going to, they began to establish the Disinformation Governance Board, as if some bureaucrats can tell us what we can say, what we can't say. I mean, it was like crazy. What's misinformation? What's disinformation? What's malinformation? All these crazy terms again. And we made a big stink about that. I bet you talked about it. And all kinds of conservative folks around the country were talking about it. And long story short, the Biden administration, well, we've decided to cancel the Disinformation Governance Board. And it's because we made a big, that doesn't square with the First Amendment. Another good example was the IRS used to have agents make unannounced visits to American citizens' homes. And Danny Warfall, the commissioner, announced a year and a half, 2 years ago that, we're gonna stop that. We're concerned about our agents and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, the reason you stopped is because we caught you. Literally, when Matt Taibbi was testifying in front of our committee, the IRS, on the Twitter files, come in front of our committee. While he's testifying, the IRS was knocking on his door. I mean, you talk about, and there's not one person I've related this story to. It was big news at the time. No one thinks that was just a coincidence. That was just happened. Everyone thinks that's the government trying to chill speech. It turned out they actually owed Taibbi money. The IRS did, but I mean, they're knocking on his door while he's testifying in front of our committee. So that they no longer do that. So there's some progress. I mean, I talked about GARM, some other things we're doing. But as far as people being held accountable, it is frustrating to the American people. I understand it, but you got to have a Justice Department.
In your opinion, nothing's going to happen to Fauci, based on what you're saying. Yeah. So he's going to, okay. So then let me ask a different question. You know how in free market, free enterprise, Elon buys X, Matt Taibbi, Barry Weiss, all these guys, there's a whole crew of them, Twitter files, wow. Biden administration talking to YouTube, Google, take this guy, suspend this guy.
Yeah.
Twitter, hey, you guys gonna, then Mark Zuckerberg, Facebook, there's can Trump, if he gets elected, so he wins next Tuesday, he wins.
Oh, let's hope.
Yeah, he wins.
Hope.
Can he assign folks to go do FBI files, CIA files, to go do DOJ files, Fauci files, CDC files? And would America benefit from someone actually exposing the level of corruption that some of these officials had talking to these different social media companies? But I'm talking government communication with them, not the other way around. Because in order for us to find out, we would have to buy Google. There's nobody that can afford to buy Google right now. It's $1 trillion, $1.5 trillion. You would have to buy Facebook. You would have to buy these guys. But flip it. If we assign people to go that route, can you get to the bottom of it?
Yeah, I think you can, and we've done some of that. For example, you mentioned, I always use this example because it's the most sort of prominent one, and it was an email on the third day of the Biden administration. So I think it was January 22nd, 23rd. There's an email from Clark Humphrey in the executive office of the president, the White House, an email to Twitter, and the email says, take down this tweet ASAP. And the tweet was from RFK Jr. And the tweet was, if you remember when, we were talking earlier, you love baseball, when Hank Aaron passed away, RFK Jr. did a tweet. He said, Hank Aaron passed away after taking the COVID shot. He took the shot to encourage Black Americans to get vaccinated. So what's that? 3 sentences. Every single one of those sentences is accurate. Every sentence is true. He took the shot. He passed away after the shot, and he was doing so to encourage Black Americans to get vaccinated. And the Biden-Harris administration wanted that taken down, and I'm like, it's a true state. There's all true statements. But that is the level of censorship. So we've been able to expose some of that, but certainly if President Trump gets in, he can, because we've subpoenaed, and it's always a fight with this agency, that agency, whether it's FBI, CISA, the White House, whatever. We even brought in some of these people, we depose them, we have them in hearings. We do all that. And then we put out the reports that lay out the facts. But certainly President Trump gets in, you're going to get a new FBI director, you're going to get a new attorney general, and they can dig into stuff with the Justice Department. You're going to get a new person running Department of Homeland Security. They can dig into any information there. But you can look at what kind of communication was going from the government to these big tech companies.
Is swamp a real thing? Okay, so how easy is it how easy is it within FBI, within DOJ, within CIA, within all these institutions to identify who the swamps are?
Well, it starts at the top. I actually think we use the FBI as an example. I think the vast majority of the agents are good people. We have 2 former agents who work for the committee. They're great guys. They're right out of Central Casting, Irish name, Italian name, from Pittsburgh and Cleveland. They're just good guys who help us as we're looking at them. They tell us, here's how they would do, So it's been really, I think the agents are great people, but it's the people at top, it's the people in D.C. that are the problem. If you go back to, go back to the whole spying on Trump's campaign back in 2016, when it was, Strzok and Page and all the Klein Smith, the lawyer for the FBI who lies to the FISA court, changes an email, turns it around 180 degrees to get the warrant to go spy on folks associated with President Trump's campaign. That's the problem. These weren't like agents who came up through the streets in Pittsburgh and Cleveland and New York and Rose. These were like lawyers who were working in D.C. for the FBI. And you saw the bias and the disdain they had. Remember the one email from Peter Strzok to Lisa Page? He's in the Walmart in Virginia, and he's in the Northern Virginia Walmart. He says, "I can smell the Trump supporters." It's like the disdain they have for us, country folk like me from Ohio and folks across the heartland and everything else. So, there's
who can Trump fire? Who can he not fire?
I've encouraged, and I've said this to the press, but I believe it. Come in, fire everyone you're allowed to fire. And then, frankly, fire a few people you're not allowed to fire. Make them take you to court to send a message like there is a new sheriff back in town, and we're going to make this agency, we're going to make this government work for the people. And then the real thing he's looking to do is put Elon in charge of making the government a little more efficient, for goodness sake. Which so I think that is the attitude that I think his team has. Certainly the attitude I think the president has.
So when you say come in and fire everybody, and some you're not supposed to fire, so what's the number? You just said earlier 12,000 people in the history of America have been members of Congress. It's a very elite organization. It's very honorable to be one of 12,000. Hasn't happened that many times, and God knows how many people have lived in the U.S. since 1776. Yeah. What is that number of how many people to fire to clean house?
Well, there are certain people, historically, of course, you come in, we'll use the Justice Department since, we're on the Judiciary Committee. You fire all the U.S. attorneys. Just like there's, I think, I forget what the number, 100, I forget the number of U.S. attorneys in the districts around the country. You fire all them. I think you come in and get rid of the FBI director. You come in and get rid, obviously the cabinet's going to be new. But there's a level of people at the top of these agencies that are political appointments. I would like, you got to get rid of all that, I think. And then if there's some level below where you want to, like, this person, maybe they need to go too. And just, again, to demonstrate we're going to make the agencies not be weaponized against the American people, but actually serve we the people who pay their salaries, who pay the taxes. That's supposed to be how the government operates.
How do you filter out the swamp, though? How do you know who's swamp? How do you know who's swamp?
It's all about leadership at the agency. It'll take a while to figure it out.
What are signs? Like if I were to, because remember, like he talked about it, first time he came around, he didn't know anybody in D.C. So just kind of hiring people left and right. Nowadays there's rumors circulating who he's going to hire as his chief of staff that's going to help him with all the other people and all these names that we're hearing about. But how do you identify who's swamp?
I think it's like any organization. You have to have leadership matters. So, okay, if you got to pick the guy who's going to, again, let's say, lead the FBI and say, okay, here's how we're operating. We're not going to be, kicking in the door of some pro-life activists in Philadelphia and put him in handcuffs in front of his wife and children. We're gonna handle things different, as just an example that come to mind. But it all starts with the people at the top, and it starts with smart people who are committed to the Constitution and them getting in there, and whether it's what they've done in business, identifying key people who they can trust, who are going to do the right thing. I think it's all about leadership. And of course, that starts with President Trump as commander-in-chief and head of the executive branch, and then right on down through each of these agencies.
How different is the approach on the second term? Because in my mind, I'm thinking strategy. First term, you're not going to do everything because you kind of will do 60% of what you want to do, but you got to keep some of the real stuff that you want to do on your second term to get reelected, so you're not a one-term president because that's embarrassing. You want to be a two-term. So maybe you'll keep the 40 and surprise everybody on the second term because you don't give a shit about getting reelected, right? Okay. So how different is it now, second term, not back-to-back, if he wins, how different is a second term being used on a few different lenses that I'm looking at this? One, if I'm mainstream media, Trump gets elected, I don't know if Trump is my enemy anymore. I think the number one enemy for me will be who's going to be constant, which is probably going to be Elon. And I think the number two enemy for me will be J.D. Vance because he can be a two-term president. So I think Trump actually drops to 3 long-term, 1 short-term, but he goes to 3 long-term because Vance is actually formidable enough that he can go up toe-to-toe against anybody, right?
Oh, yeah.
So now, what different kind of a Trump are we going to see in this second term that we didn't see on the first term?
Well, I think he even admitted this in his recent interview with our conversation with Joe Rogan. That one of the things I think Rogan asked him what he did any regrets, and he said some of the people he hired in the first term, and I know he regrets Jeff Sessions and stuff that he did at the Justice Department. So I think he will come in a much better way, and like he's already thinking about, I assume, and his team is, and Lutnick is doing the transition. Getting ready if and when President Trump wins, which again, I think he's going to, putting together that team that's going to be ready to go. The other thing is, this is why it's important we win the Senate and maintain the majority in the House, is I think the mandate is clear if we win everything. Reauthorize the tax cuts, get this economy going. Stop and think about it. Democrats win, they're talking about taxing unrealized gains. Maybe one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. So we win, we reauthorize the tax cuts, put the tax package in place, secure the border. A lot of that President Trump can do, executive order, dealing with Mexico, getting back to remain in Mexico, working with the Mexican government and then common sense energy policy. Energy is the key. I always say if you want to, the world is safer and better when America leads. If you want to lead militarily, diplomatically, you have to lead economically. You want to lead economically, you got to have readily available energy at affordable cost. Get back to common sense energy policy. And then you continue the work on this, stopping these agencies from being weaponized against the country. I think that's the mandate. So come in, pick the people who are totally in agreement with 1, 2, 3, and protecting liberty and First Amendment, all the things that we've talked about, and then put them in place and let's go. So that's how it has to work. And I think the team, that transition team with Linda McMahon, Lutnick, Eric, and Don Jr. and all are working on putting that together. So if, in fact, next Tuesday goes like I think it's going to go, like I think we think it's going to go, hit the ground running and get, like President Trump, get America, make America great again.
How different do you approach second versus first? You've been around 94 when you became president, when you went into this business. I think Clinton was president, right? First term.
I was in state government, but I came to Congress in 6 of the last 2 years of Bush administration.
Last 2 years of Bush.
And I had all of Obama, and then.
So how and you're a guy that studies history. You're the guy that studies this business. You're super competitive. How is second term typically treated differently than first?
Yeah, I think in a broad context, legacy. I think President Trump already has a great legacy. He put the embassy in Jerusalem. He got out of the Iran deal. He built the wall. He cut regulations. He did the big tax cut package. He put conservatives, 3 of them, Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, Coney Barrett, on the court, changed the federal court system in a good way, lower judges as well. So I think he's already got a pretty, I tell people, best president in my lifetime as far as doing what he said he was going to do, certainly. And I think now it's legacy. Can he do better in the Middle East and build on the Abraham Accords? Can he get our economy roaring again? Can he get back to common sense energy policy where we're, as he says, we're no longer just energy independent, we're energy dominant. All those things, I think, is what he's focused on.
Okay. Who is the leader or the leaders of the swamp? You've been in it. You negotiate with some of these guys. Who are some of the leaders and influencers, the E.F. Huttons of the swamp?
Well, I just think it's the left. The left and all their crazy policies and how the bureaucracy seems to sort of move that way. And how would I guess, I always say the left seems to me the divide in America today. This is what Sarah Huckabee Sanders said this, and I totally agree with her. If you remember, she did the response to the State of the Union a year and a half ago. She did a great job. And it's a tough job because the response, you're in a room talking to a camera. The president comes into the chamber and the House, the Senate, the Supreme Court, the lights, the camera. It's a big, but her she did the response, and her best line I thought was when she said the divide in America today is normal versus crazy. And so it seems like the whole bureaucracy's got these crazy left-wing positions, and the left just sort of reinforces it.
But name, faces, who are they?
It's the top people. Again, I look at look at Homeland Security. I kind of focus on the agencies that we deal with, but look at Homeland Security. They tried to set up a disinformation governance board. Mayorkas will come in front of Congress and never give us an answer to any question. And when he does, he says he doesn't know. I mean, I remember a couple years ago I asked him, at the time there were so many, 40-some people, I think was the number at the time, who had come into the country who were on the terrorist watch list. And I said, what's their status? Have they been detained? Where are they detained? And he said, I don't know. I'm like, well, dude, you're the head of Homeland Security. The Homeland Security, you kind of should know if they've been detained, and if so, where are they detained at? And he had to get back with it. So it's people like Mayorkas and the key people who work in the upper parts of the Department of Homeland Security as an example. And I think the same thing applies at Justice. The top people of the Justice Department are they're the ones who run the Justice Department. And then there's just some probably people you don't know the names of.
That's what I want to know.
Career people who were there, who were working. Well, here's a good example. The Civil Rights Division of the Justice Department is going after Virginia. I talked to Glenn Youngkin the other night, because Virginia is saying we only think citizens should vote in the election. And they're saying, oh, you can't do that 90 days before an election. That violates the National Voting Registration Act. And so now Virginia has to go all the way to the Supreme Court for something that's common sense, because the Civil Rights Division and the lawyers there and the Justice Department are going after. They're doing the same thing in Ohio. They sent our Secretary of State a similar letter. Our Secretary of State called me 2 weeks ago, said, look, I got this letter. All these questions they're asking, all to kind of intimidate, it seems to me, Secretary of States and governors who are doing the right thing. So it's those kind of folks who kind of career people, but at the top levels of that. And that's why I'm saying fire everyone you're allowed, and maybe fire some of those people to send a message.
What leverage do you have the most when you're negotiating with your peers? Like when you're sitting there and you guys are behind closed doors, cameras are not on, okay? Are there certain people that we're not getting nothing done with that guy or that gal? And then you're like, no, here's a leverage. We're going to get it done because these are the 3, 4, 5 things that we use as a lever for leverage.
The ultimate leverage is the one we're not willing to use much, is the power of the purse. I mean, that's how the founders envisioned it. Legislative branch supposed to use the power of the purse, supposed to use the appropriations process to say, hey, agency, if you're not going to give us information we need, if you're not going to do things right for the American people, sorry, you're not getting as much money as you got last time, or maybe we're going to hold your budget up until you do. I mean, that is exactly how the founders envisioned the process working. Unfortunately, what I think's happened is we've let the executive branch we're not willing to exercise that authority in the way we. Now, you can't be crazy about it. Like, nobody wants a government shutdown, but I've argued if we're in this negotiation, if you pick one really powerful issue and stand firm on it and negotiate with the executive branch, I think you have a chance to win. You can't be saying we need these 10 things done, or we're not going to give you money for this agency, that. It gets all confusing. But But if you're focused and I think surgical about it, you can use the power of the purse, and we got to do a better job of doing that.
Okay, so that makes a lot of sense to me, right? Why don't they? Why don't you use it? For example, hey, we need $2.1 billion for this. No, we're not giving it to you. You see what happened? Look at Congress. We could have fixed this border a long time ago if they would have only approved that. No, but $60 billion was going to Ukraine. Whatever the number was, $19 billion was going to Israel and Palestine. Only $18 billion of it was going to the border and all the other stuff. You guys were 80% of it was going to, no, but that was a border bill. Less than 15%, 18% of the money was going to the actual border. You named it a border bill, but they're able to get out there, right? Why don't you just stay tight with it? Why release that money? Why release that money to those folks?
Look, I agree with you. But you got to have the votes to do it. And there are times that
Who controls the House, though?
Well, I agree. I get it. But some of our colleagues just don't want to go there.
Who has the biggest backbone you've worked with that had the biggest brass that could say no and we're not going to compromise? Who's somebody that the other side was like, damn, we can't get nothing done through this guy?
Well, President Trump. President Trump can negotiate, and we got the tax cut package done when he was there. He did just a number. We got regulatory reform. He stood firm and got his Supreme Court justices confirmed. He's been I think real tough.
Who else? But not president.
But you mean in the Congress?
Right. So Congress, Senate, somebody where you're like, they fear this guy.
Well, I think it has to be. You have to have a majority of the Republic. You got to have a majority of the Congress who's willing to stand firm on something. I argue. An example I use is from a year ago. We have these continuing resolutions. Not the way you should operate. You should just pass the appropriation bills, the individual bills. But continuing resolutions aren't all bad if you're gaining something in the process. And I argued when we were in one of these situations a year ago, going up to September 30th, the end of our fiscal year, I said, if we're going to do a continuing resolution, let's stand firm on something. Say, okay, we'll fund the government at the level you guys want. We'll do it. We won't do the individual bills. We'll fund but we want to fix the border. And we should have attached, I thought, some simple language which said, no money can be used to process or release into the country any new migrants. So just call a timeout on the asylum claims. Not a timeout on people with a legitimate visa or anything, but people coming in claiming asylum, because we know most of those people aren't legitimate claims. Let's just call a timeout on that and hold firm on that. After all, even Mayor Adams in New York was saying, we can't have millions and millions of migrants just coming into our country like the Biden and Harris administration was doing. And unfortunately, we couldn't get the votes for it. So that's how I think you play. I learned a long time ago in politics. One really good issue beats 15 pretty good issues every time. And we had a really good issue that if we're in a fight on appropriations and on spending, we should have focused on. That to me was the really good
What's
issue.
the longest government shutdown we ever had? 35-day government, the longest year since
Something like that, yeah.
1995, 1996 led to 380 federal workers furloughed and additional 420. So when we say government shutdown, who doesn't get paid? Does it go all the way down to military, Army, Air Force, National Guard? Is it everybody? Or what is government shutdown?
No, there's essential services that do get paid and aren't shut down. In the end, it's really relatively small, and you can make sure, like we could say, well, we want to fund the military, but what the left will typically do is they'll hold up the defense bill, and they'll say, we're not going to pass the defense bill until you pass all the other welfare spending.
Who's better at holding the power of purse, the left or the right?
Well, I mean, the left wants to spend money all the time, so we definitely want to spend less than what the left does. The Republicans.
Well, you're saying if they're using military, spending, and that's a big amount, right? We're spending military. Who's better at using that card? We're not gonna give you entitlements. We're not gonna let you spend money.
Yeah, the Democrats use that
They're tighter to
every cycle. Every year they will say, because frankly, the number one responsibility of the federal government is secure the country. So we should pass that should be the first bill we pass. Do the National Defense Authorization, authorize where it needs to go, fund the Defense Department, make sure our military needs what it needs, and military families, are taken care of, and the weapon systems we need to deal with China and North Korea, Russia, everything else. Fine, pass that first, and then negotiate. But the left always says no. We're holding that up because they know Republicans. And that's central to the defense of the country. They hold that up because they want all the other. Same with the farm bill.
When I was trying to be a firefighter, I went to the fire department in Granada Hills, And I'll never forget, I walked. I didn't have a car. My car hasn't been delivered yet, the Mitsubishi Eclipse. I was waiting for it. I went knocked on the door. Hey, I'd like to be a firefighter. Really? Yeah, I just got out of the Army. I TS'd a week ago. I'd like to get a job. There's a 5-year freeze for firefighters right now in LA County. I'm like, really? Yeah. Seriously, yeah. Wow. Yeah. I thought I was going to get out. And by the way, thank God there was, because what I ended up doing was great. But if I was a firefighter, who knows? I may have retired 7 years ago from being a firefighter, and 8 years ago from being a firefighter. But why can't when's the last time you guys had a freeze? We're shutting down the border. We're not taking anybody for a year, 2 years until we figure this thing out. We're shutting down such and such department. We're not hiring anybody, a freeze for the next 2 years. When's the last time you guys had a freeze?
I can't recall. We couldn't even, think about this. We couldn't even, in one of the bills, the fund of the government, I think this is last year, we couldn't even stop the FBI money that had already been appropriated. We couldn't even claw back money that had been appropriated for a new FBI headquarters. Like, what? There's no way the American people want the FBI to get a new headquarters. The FBI that spied on President Trump, the FBI that had a memorandum in the Richmond field office that if you're a pro-life Catholic, you're an extremist. The FBI that, can't tell us who planted the pipe bombs on January 6th, who leaked the Dobbs opinion, who had cocaine at the White House. They can't tell us any of that stuff, but they need a headquarters? Like, you got to be kidding me. So some of these things are frustrating. Let
me ask you a question. What happened here? Well, everybody wanted to know what happened here. Play this clip, Rob. I don't know if you've seen this or not. Maybe you can lower the audio a little bit, Rob. Increase it a little bit. This went viral. Everybody got an envelope. President Carter, that's Hillary, Bill. Jeb gets the same envelope. Mom shows it to him. Look at Jeb's reaction and her reaction. Her reaction.
And refresh my memory, was this at John McCain's funeral? Whose funeral?
George H.W. Bush.
Senior.
George
Senior's
H.W.
funeral.
Oh, okay.
Well, what is this envelope? Do you know anything about it?
I have no idea. I have no idea.
What would typically be an envelope like this where you're giving for Jeb to react the way he did for his wife?
Well, my first thought is, if I remember correctly, President Trump did not attend, or did he?
He did, but he didn't get an envelope.
I believe he ended up having to leave early for something. So
yeah.
He did not get an envelope, but he was in attendance at the funeral.
Okay. I don't know. My first inclination was something about Trump, but I have no idea. What's your guess?
Yeah, I mean, if you think about, if you buy into the idea that there's establishment, anti-establishment, okay, it's fair to say Clinton, Obama, Bush, Biden, that's all establishment, right? They've been around for a while. Prescott, Senior, GW.
But did Cheney get one too? I saw Dick Cheney there. Did he get one? Do you know?
I didn't see. I couldn't.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then Obama doesn't have a big reaction. They're pros. Hillary Clinton, not big reaction. You know, you're seeing some of this stuff. Jeb's reaction, big reaction.
Yeah.
I just wonder, who gave the envelope? Do we know who gave the envelope to everybody? Because even Obama's got the envelope. You know what happens if you're receiving the envelope? If you're receiving the envelope, you're not the leader. If you're a handler, it's kind of like, when they say, hey, I just got a $250,000 check for doing XYZ. And then people say, yeah, I want to know who cut the check.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? Who cut the check? Oh, the guy that cut the check is the guy I want to know, right?
Yeah.
Who's handing the envelopes over? It's got to be someone's assistant that's relaying a message. So who would that? Who's more powerful than those guys?
This is in the church service.
This is in the church service
at the funeral.
Is it kind of like it almost looks like, hey kids, this is your allowance. Man, I wish my allowance was bigger. What is this? That sucks. I want a bigger allowance than this, right? It's not like it's a love letter. And it's, by the way, If you go back to the clip with the white envelope, it's not a letter and it's not a paragraph. Go to Jeb. Look how long it takes for Jeb to realize what's in the envelope. It didn't take 7 seconds. Press play. Look, count the seconds. She reacts. He sees. That's half a second. So half a second is what? A number? A half a second reaction to something can only be if it's a... And then it's got to be small enough so the people behind you don't see. Maybe it says, there is no bone and ribeye for dinner tonight. Right, Rob? Maybe it's just chicken only. It's like, Jeb is like, are you kidding me, Mom? I need more options than chicken.
Yeah.
I like steak. Maybe he's like a vegetarian. He's upset that there's no vegetarian option on the menu. It can be that innocent. Let's not go deeper here,
It was
Jim.
almost like a disgusting look, though. So it wasn't.
Well, some people don't like chicken, right?
But it wasn't a disappointed look. It was a disgusted look.
That's a good point.
From both.
So you're saying it's more like caviar, like he just doesn't like, because some people are disgusted by caviar.
From Mrs. Bush and...
Play it again, Rob, just that one clip. Look at Jeb. He looks like he needs to go to the bathroom. Press it again. Look at that. Wow.
Yeah, that's...
Can you speculate? Even somebody... I'm surprised you've never seen this.
Yeah, I have. I have, and I'm actually kind of surprised I haven't too.
Have you?
Now, is this all continuous or is it spliced? Is it like that whatever number of seconds? That's how it happened.
That's how the video this video that's been viral and a lot of people have shared it and talked about it. Everybody wants to know what's in the white envelope.
Yeah,
it's only been seen in this pattern of sequencing of clips. Now somebody may have edited and put it together. Who knows? But it is all from the event of George Bush Sr.'s funeral.
Yeah.
And it's not like, for one part of it, I'm like, okay, maybe who's speaking tonight? You would have known who's already speaking, so it's not speaking.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a meeting later on today. Maybe it's Trump left. Trump won't be here. He left. He's not here.
Yeah.
He's doing this. He said this. What is it?
Well, that was my first thought.
Right.
Because, there's obviously no love lost between President Trump and Jeb Bush. I mean, back during the campaign.
What did Trump say? He says, "Oh, you're really tough, Jeff. Yeah, you're really tough." Well, let me get this straight. I started off all the way on the end. Now I'm over here. You're at 3%. I'm at 41%. And soon you're going to be off the stage here, right? That's the whole he's tough exchange that they had.
Yeah. Well, and he called him low energy, all the time.
He wasn't lying, though. I mean,
I know.
There's a difference between being a president and a governor, right? Is this the clip, Rob?
I'm looking. I'm not sure.
I don't think this is it. I think there's a different one. You'll find it may be, but I don't know if that's the one or not. Are you still thinking about that white envelope? Is that kind of where you're still going?
It's like that's unbelievable. I'm curious because it is a disgusted look. It looks like from Jeb Bush.
Have you ever been at events where you've gotten a white envelope and you're like, holy shit, what is this?
I have not.
Yeah.
I have not. Yeah.
I don't know.
But how about President Trump? You made me think when you showed that picture of him on the debate stage. Back in 2015, he comes to that. I've told him this. I said, you fundamentally changed American politics. So the first debate was 2015 in Cleveland because you remember the 2016 convention was in Cleveland. And I remember that day, I told Paul, I said, come with me today. We're doing some stops in our district, in the northern part of our district. I said, we'll go on up to Cleveland and we'll watch the debate. And so she came with me. And if you remember, there was always the junior varsity debate, right? And then there was the varsity debate.
I remember that. Yeah, of course.
And Trump was always center stage varsity debate because he was leading in the polls. And and if you remember the first question from Megyn Kelly,
of course,
was
Rosie O'Donnell. You've called women this, that. That's not true. Only Rosie O'Donnell.
Yeah. And when I talked to the president about this, I said, you fundamentally changed politics. This is what my boys tell me. He says, Dad, he changed politics because everyone else would have answered it with, well, I was taken out of context and, they'd have yabba dabba dooed it. And he just leaned in and gave the response he did. And what was amazing in the arena, everybody laughed. Every guy laughed. Every lady laughed. Everybody, because my wife was sitting beside me, she was laughing like everyone.
Oh, you were in the room.
Yeah, we were in there when he did. And then of course the other thing he did when I was telling this story about how he changed politics, literally in the first debate, he goes, "Yeah, but that wasn't the best part of the debate." I go, "Really?" He goes, "Yeah, the best part of the debate was he goes later. He says, if you remember, Megyn Kelly asked, how many of you will pledge to support the Republican nominee? Whoever wins, how many of you will pledge to support? Raise your hand.
He didn't raise his hand.
And he didn't raise his hand. And she looks at him, she goes, but Mr. Trump, you didn't raise your hand. And he gave a totally American common sense answer, right? He goes, kind of looks both ways, goes, depends on who it is, right? And which is exactly where Americans are. Depends on who it is. And since that time, it's been, Trump's dominated the party and I think dominated politics for, 10 years now.
Which one? Is this the clip, Rob?
Yes, I'm just having internet issues. Let's see.
Let's see if it, okay. If it doesn't play, it's totally fine. So, yeah, I mean, look, for us that we're on the outside and we just kind of watch this stuff taking place, you sit there and you wonder, who really are these power players? Who really are these guys that have the influence behind closed doors? Who's telling these guys what to do? Have you met any of these guys? Have these guys, because yesterday Ben Shapiro posted something out. He says, I got a text, right, Rob? If you want to pull up the text that Ben Shapiro got, he says, I just got this text from, was it New York Times? I think it's a New York Times. Ben Shapiro, New York Times text. New York Times. And he shares it that he got, if you go lower, it'll show what the text was. Yeah, that's the one right there. Hey, good day, Mr. Shapiro. I hope you're doing well. I'm Nico Grant, reporter, New York Times. Wanted to give you an opportunity to comment for an upcoming article that's taking a look at how political commentators have discussed the upcoming election on YouTube. We rely on Okay. October 29, here's what points, talking points, media matters, identify 286 YouTube videos between May and August that contain election misinformation. Researchers identify videos posted by you in those 4 months. We feature a clip of you saying your party rigged many of the voting rules in advance. I have also a few questions. Are you a member of the YouTube Partner Program? If so, how frequently does YouTube demonetize you? Has YouTube sent you messages, emails, or notices last year that your content was... So he posted. Then Tucker says he got it as well, and Tucker gave him a very nice response. I don't know if you heard what he said to him.
I can imagine.
Yeah, he said F off or something like that, right? And thank you for your prompt response. Would you like to address any of these? I would like to participate in an attempt to censor me. No thanks, but I do hope you'll quote me, and I write above. Note that I told you to F off, which I am now doing. Thanks.
Well, by the way, Ben Shapiro came and testified, and literally a week later, Ben's testimony was powerful, and he testified on this GARM issue we were talking about briefly earlier, because what they were doing to the Daily Wire, and then. Like I said, GARM no longer in business, out of business. Oh, here he is, yeah. He did a great job.
How long is it, Rob? We don't need to play it right now, so it's a longer one. But I guess a part of it with everything that's going on, let's talk Google, right? I mean, for the last 3 days, everybody's been posting, Rogan's video is not showing up. Rogan's video is not showing up. They're censoring, all this other stuff. And then Rogan comes out and says, well, when it comes onto YouTube, yes, it wasn't showing up, but if you want to watch it, we post it over here.
Yeah.
And then YouTube even responds back and says, look, we were having some issues. It is true that other clips were showing up, not the main interview. We are working on it. We apologize for inconvenience. So YouTube responds, and the average person gets to decide whether they're censoring or not. That's up to the average person to think about. And then when you go a little bit deeper and you look at the numbers, you'll notice the number one company that donates the most to the Democratic Party is Google, right? It's not something that's not known. It's public. You can look at what the company is that gives the most to Trump. That's public. If you want to look at who gave the most to Kamala, right there, Google number one by a mile. Then it's Microsoft. Then Brown & Brown, J&J, Apple, Oracle, Wells, NVIDIA. If you look at Trump, American Airlines, Walmart, Boeing, Lockheed, United Airlines, FedEx, Wells Fargo, Johnson & Johnson. And it's not even close when you look at the numbers that's being given, right? Small amounts. So you've worked with Google before. You work with those guys going back and forth. How much of it you think is still happening to the levels where they are favoring Kamala, they are favoring the other candidate, not Trump, trying to censor some of the interviews? Or are you at a point where you're starting to trust Google more than you did before?
I think all the left, media, tech, I think it all is biased to the left. It's like on your phone, do your news app, hit the news, and every single story, with the exception of Fox, that comes up, is negative on Trump or Vance or a Republican. It just every single one. So we just know that's the lay of the land. God bless Elon for buying Twitter. We now have a place where it's fair, where it's you know, like I said, the First Amendment's actually operating as the First Amendment. So that just, I always say the left has a template, a formula they follow all the time. The left tells a lie, big media reports the lie, big tech amplifies the lie, and then when you tell the truth, they call you a racist, or they'll call you something else. They'll call you the liar, or they'll call you whatever. And then pretty soon your position proves accurate, and then they're on to the next lie. And it's like Trump colluded with Russia. Total lie. We all knew it, what we thought it was at the time. We went through the facts. Mueller did a 2-year investigation, $30 million taxpayer money concluded, no collusion. No. But Schiff tells it, media reports it, big tech amplifies it. And frankly, if you're against it, I remember in so this is right in the middle of all that one. 2018, I get a call from a colleague, Congressman Gaetz, and he says, Jim, Twitter is shadow banning us. And at that time, it was like, was it 6 years ago? I was like, I didn't know what shadow banning, what is it? And he kind of explains it. Turned out he was right. Twitter was shadow banning 4 members of Congress: Gaetz, Nunes, Meadows, Jordan. Just happened to be the 4 guys who were digging into the whole Mueller thing and the whole Russia collusion as being BS. And sure enough, they said, well, we didn't mean to do it. It was a glitch in our algorithm, you know, which is in essence what YouTube said today or yesterday. So I just feel like it always.
But between the 4, let's just go between the 3. Twitter, and I put Twitter aside. Go Google, Facebook, and Apple. Let's just say between those 3, right? Which one of them is most accommodating? Which one of them do you still not trust that they're still doing something behind closed doors?
Well, I think probably the one that's the most concerning is Google, because that's where it's like 80-90% of searches happen on Google. So I guess I'm probably more concerned about that. I feel like it's gotten better, but is it fair? I think I'm probably like a lot of Americans, just kind of wonder. But I feel like it's gotten better. And I'd like to think, frankly, that some of it's gotten better because of the work we've done on our committee, where where we've done these investigations and got facts out there on these various things. I mean, I know like Climate Action 100, number of people have left that organization too. So there's like, because of our investigations. And so I do think it's getting better, but it requires, I think, Congress doing its oversight work.
So in regards to the Facebook letter that Zuck wrote, I don't know if you remember the letter that he wrote. Right? He wrote it to you guys. Yeah. And hey, at the end of the day, yes, I just want to read the main part to Honorable Jim Jordan, to you. Appreciate the committee. I welcome the opportunity to share what we've taken on. There's a lot to talk about around our government. So in 2021, senior officials from the Biden administration, including the White House, repeatedly pressured our teams for months to censor COVID-19, including humor and satire, and expressed, he's talking about Babylon Bee, and expressed a lot of frustration with our teams when we didn't agree. Ultimately, it was our decision whether or not to take down, and we own our decision, including COVID-19 related changes we made to our enforcement in the wake of this pressure. I believe the government pressure was wrong, and I regret that we were not more outspoken about it. I also think we made choices that, with the benefit of hindsight and new information, we wouldn't make today. Like I said to our teams at the time, I feel strongly that we should not compromise our content standards due to the pressure from any administration in either direction, and we're ready to push back if something like this happens again. Now, some of the people, when this was taken, I'm curious, because I'm talking to, because he wrote the letter to you.
Yep.
I said, so he's either being noble about it, and he's been spending a lot of time with the UFC guys, fighters. Anytime you're spending time with those guys, Dana, those guys are just America, fighting. It's very simple, libertarian mindset type of deal, little bit edgy, and he's liking being around those guys, right? He's actually getting along with being around those guys. It's either noble, it's number 2, he's sick of it on what's happened with it. 3, he's scared. 4, he's getting ready for Trump. That's going to be in office. And this was his way of saying, I don't think Biden's going to win. I think at the time Biden was still the candidate. What do you think was a reason for him? And by the way, if this letter would have come out in the next 7 days, that could have determined the election. Democrats are lucky this came out 4 or 5 months ago. The timing of this happening now could be like the to Comey saying to Hillary Clinton a week before, whatever it was, 5 days before the election, some say that was the reason why Trump won. So why do you think he wrote this letter publicly and shared it with everybody, including yourself?
Because he was tired of our investigation. We deposed 12 people at Meta, Facebook, from top level people all the way down to line level people, and we were getting the facts. I mean, we deposed Sir Nick Clegg, member of Parliament, number I think 3 at Meta. He sat for a long deposition, and the other thing, it basically admits 3 things in here. We were pressured to censor. We did in fact censor. And then he said later in the letter, he said, and he references the Hunter Biden laptop story, and then he references the fact that no more Zuckerbucks. He's not going to send a bunch of money.
$400 million.
Yeah, $400 million. Right. That I think impacted the election. And so I think he would just like, okay, we went out of this. We're going to admit to what actually happened, and he gave us the facts. And you know, we're continuing to look at this broad censorship issue, but I think that was the primary. But all the things you rattled off, it could have been all the above. But certainly at some point when we've deposed, I believe it was 12 people already at Facebook.
How's your relationship with him now?
I don't talk. I dealt with Clegg.
His people.
Yeah, I dealt with Clegg.
Got it.
And fine relationship with Clegg. He sat for a long deposition. I mean, one of the things I do remember that he said, and I think I can say this because I think we've released the deposition. He basically said, you know, 99%. I think 99% of his money doesn't come. You know, their business model is not politics. It's only like 1% of but the politics is like 99% of their problems when it gets into political stuff. And so that probably was part of it as well.
Yeah, I mean, between his team and Google's team, whose team is easier to deal with? Whose lawyers are easier to deal with? That are more accommodating?
Oh, I think we dealt with Facebook.
They're easier to deal with.
Yeah, if I would talk with some of our staff lawyers, but I'm pretty sure it's Facebook.
Facebook.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And like I said, we deposed their number 3 guy.
You mentioned Matt Gaetz earlier, right? 10 minutes ago. Mm-hmm. And Trump at an event yesterday, I think, or 2 days ago, he said, "There's a secret Matt Gaetz and I know." Can you play this clip? I'm curious to know if you know what this secret is about. Go ahead, Rob.
We got to get the senators elected because we can take the Senate pretty easily. And I think with our little secret, we're going to do really well with the House, right? Our little secret is having a big impact. He and I have a secret. We'll tell you what it is when the race is over.
Do you have any idea what he's talking about?
Well, I think he might be talking to the speaker because I saw a clip. Maybe it's Matt too, but I was thinking that was with Speaker Johnson. I don't. Unless he's referring. Oh, maybe someone said Matt Gaetz here. Okay, was this in Madison Square Garden? Was this Sunday night or was this?
Yeah, MSG.
Okay. I don't know, but it was funny. Johnson was having some. I saw a clip where Johnson was having some fun with the press on talking about the secret too. It could be all the. You know, President Trump is really good late in campaigns. Doing these teletown halls where he calls into a member of Congress's district and people get on the line, and you know, President Trump's just good in those settings and firing people up to go vote. So they may be referring to that, it might be something else. I have no idea.
Okay. Congress, Senate, Governor, President, your experience. You know, when you, in sports, if you go and you look at offensive line, they have a certain personality about themselves, protective, you know, big brother. You kind of see a pattern of who they were growing up, all this other stuff, right? Corner, safety, you know, a little bit different of a personality. Wide receivers, typically the number 1 position for divas that, you know, they're always like, oh my God, it's not fair. You didn't throw me the ball enough. Always very demanding, you know, temperamental. If you think about the history of wide receivers and all this stuff. And then if you go to running back, different quarterback, leader, you know, wanting to make the team come together. There's different wiring for different things, right? Profile of somebody that's in Congress versus Senate versus governor versus president. Is there a different, like if you were to say Congress, typically their strength is this is their wiring. Senate, they're typically known for this. Governor, they're typically this. And president is this.
I would say, like with anything, typically you find driven people, people who set goals, work hard, and accomplish things. The Congress is, I think, literally totally, and this is the founder's intent as well, I think, is a reflection of the country. You sit down in Congress, like sometimes we're in there voting and you're all sitting around and there's no assigned seating in the House, but you're sitting in there and you just kind of look around. They're all kinds of people, all kinds of backgrounds. And sometimes you wonder, what's the old joke about Congress? The old joke is when you first get there, you look around like, wow, I can't believe I'm in Congress. And then once you're there a while, you look around, you say, I can't believe they're in Congress, right? But it's like that's their district. And it's truly a composite of the nation. The Senate is a little more, great people, I good friends over there, but the Senate's a little more, the Senate, it's like the upper chamber. And I guess I would think, and this, I think just, most Americans would probably, I guess, believe this and think this, is the governor and the president are like executives. So they're like a leader of like a CEO kind of mindset, more so than the House where it's, committee work, and it's not quite the same as a CEO mindset, particularly in the House.
Would you say House is like in a military enlisted, Senate is more officers? Is that a way of looking at it?
Well, in the Senate, the old joke about the Senate too is, there are 100 senators think they're the next president, right? So they're all think
highly of themselves.
Well, yeah, and it's not bad. It's just the way it is. I'm reading a great book right now. It's a Team of Rivals.
Great book, yeah.
And it's amazing. Just
Lincoln, right? How he was able to work with everybody. It's an 800-page book. Oh, yeah.
And Bates and their quest to be important in politics and achieve high office, and it's fascinating. I'm only about 160 pages in, but it's a fascinating book. So yeah, there may be some of that. It's but the House is truly, and again, I think this is how the founders want it. It's the country. You got all kinds of people from all kinds of backgrounds, college degrees, non-college degrees. You got business people, non-business people. You got it all. Doctors, lawyers. You got everything, and it's again a reflection of the nation.
Yeah. Rob, did you have the next clip on what I'm looking at here? Okay, well, I don't know if you have it or not, but I'll go to the next one. So, New World Order, right? You hear this phrase, New World Order, New World Order, New World Order, right?
That's right.
And yeah, I went with our crew, Brandon, Rob, and I were like, listen, when was that phrase first used? For example, when I lived in Iran, 78 to 89, almost 11 years, right? So I said, Iran used the phrase death upon America first, right? Mark bad America. And if you look at who's the first person that said death upon America, Rob, if you Google that, the first country that said death upon America was North Korea. Okay. Mm-hmm. And they said it, I think, in 54, 59. If you zoom in, can you see what the exact date is? If you go on the Wikipedia, Death to America, and you Google, type in North Korea, type in Control F North Korea and go to it, it'll give you the date. Zoom in a little bit, Rob. Yeah, North Korea, thank you. If you can zoom in, go lower. 1979 was Iran, but keep going to North Korea. It should tell you 1950s, right there. 1950s is the first time. So 2 countries have only used the phrase death upon America. That should tell us something about who says that. Iran and North Korea, right?
Yeah.
And prior to that, nobody ever said death upon America. I'm curious. So the first time the word New World Order was used in the States was exactly 9/11, 1990.
Wow.
9/11, 1990 by Bush Sr.
Yeah, I remember when Bush Sr. did it. I didn't know that was the day.
Well, the speech that we have, he said this in a different meeting, but this one is not 9/11. This is another meeting right after that. I think this is January or February of 91.
This looks like State of the Union.
Yeah, it is. Play the clip, Rob.
A new partnership of nations has begun, and we stand today at a unique and extraordinary moment. The crisis in the Persian Gulf, as grave as it is, also offers a rare opportunity to move toward an historic period of cooperation. Out of these troubled times, our 5th objective, a new world order, can emerge, a new era, freer from the threat of terror, stronger in the pursuit of justice, and more secure in the quest for peace. An era in which the nations of the world, East and West, North and South, can prosper and live in harmony. 100 generations have searched for this elusive path to peace, while 1,000 wars raged across the span of human endeavor.
You can pause it right there.
And
what do you think about this?
I remember at the time I was
26, 25?
Yeah, so I'd been 26. So I didn't think a whole lot about it. I mean, I was on the wrestling mat, helping guys become All-American and hopefully win some Big Ten championships. But it is kind of interesting when you look back at it's been that long. I am nervous though in today's world about these guys in Europe who they all fly over there and they do their where's that event they do every year?
Davos, World Economic
the Davos,
Forum,
of course,
Schwab,
and they're all, the Klaus guy, the Klaus guy,
yeah,
because he just seems kind of creepy and strange to me, and talking about some of these same kind of terms. Like, look, I'm for America. I want America to be the greatest country, the leading country. One of the things we've traveled to Israel several times, my wife and I, with other members of Congress. And when you're over there, one of the things the folks in Israel will tell you is they say, the best way you can help us, the best way America can help Israel is for America to stay strong. If America is strong, we're better off. And I would argue the world's a better place if America leads. Our values, our principles, our economy. And so I'm not, there he is. I'm not too interested in this.
He looks like a sweetheart, though. You got to give it to him. His voice is even better. When he speaks, he's just kind of like, what a gentle giant.
Yeah, it's...
you ever heard him speak?
I have.
It's like like Tony Robbins, motivational speaker, just fires you up. It's just...
yeah. I've got to listen to him now.
No, you have to. Just look how sweet. This is the kind of voice that if you late at night, you have a lot of your stress, let him play, you will fall asleep. You'll have nightmares, but you'll fall asleep. Go ahead, Rob.
Ce nouveau monde, on doit accepter une transparence, et je dirais même une transparence totale. Tout va être transparent.
Yeah. It's better when he does it in English, but Rob speaks French, and he likes to always go to the French videos. He tricks us that way.
This anti-system movement. What we are seeing is a revolution against the system. So fixing the present system is not enough.
You can pause that.
Now,
just so you want running things, right? Like, holy cow.
But on the inside, are you so, like, I remember I'm in an insurance company. I'm a regular guy. I'm coming up. So, and then all of a sudden, I'm making some noise. Then I become a player. Then I become an executive, chairman with the company, and I'm doing very well, and I'm one of the guys that's in the face of the company, and I get invited to this one meeting where 54, 56 CEOs, vice presidents are going to be in this room. And I walk in to just size everybody up, right? To kind of see what I'm like, oh, wow. I used to look up to that guy. Damn, he's been late to every flipping meeting, and he leaves early, and he's always got a drink in his hand. Wow. Disappointed.
Yeah.
What a great speaker you are on stage. Dude, you're a schlep. What was that all about? Then I'm like, okay, that guy right there, he keeps talking about he wants his commissions to be higher for people that are no longer selling. The last time he sold something was 12 years ago. All he talks about is his handicap. He doesn't like work. He's done. This guy over here, that guy's a killer. He's going places. Who is she? Let me go see if I can have dinner with those guys. And then when you go there, and then some of the guys that have been around for 5 to 10 years will coach you. And they'll say, okay, you want the law of the land? Yes. Those guys have been done. Those 3 are about to get a divorce. That guy's got a cocaine addiction. That guy's a gambler. He's almost lost all his money. That other guy's going through a major issue in his personal life. That guy's got the most talent out of all of us, but he doesn't think big enough. That person's a great person to stay close to because everybody trusts him and he'll never lie to you. Not the biggest earner, but he's the number one character guy in the room. And I remember that moment. I'm like, oh my God, what is going on here?
Yeah.
Innocent, right? It's naive.
Yeah. 26,
27 years old.
Yeah.
I'm in a room like this, 28 years old. So for you, when you walk in and you're in it, and now you've been in it for 30 years and you're around it, is anybody talking about the New World Order stuff and what things they're worried about and what their concerns is? No, they're just coming to work and doing their jobs.
People, I think we're rightly concerned about China. I'm real concerned about this talk of central bank digital currency. I don't want the government seeing every purchase we make and all this. It's like that's frightening, particularly when you think about what we've seen the government do.
Talking about CBDC.
Yeah,
right.
that stuff that's crazy. And I'm not on the financial service. I got some buddies on that committee who are more experts in, I'm not an expert at all, but they're experts in this and they understand it. And they're like, this is bad. And because I've seen it in other areas. I mean, you talk about people in the government that I think are part of the swamp. We deposed as part of this, if you remember the letter, the 51 Intel officials who did this in 2020.
Yes.
So we deposed Clapper and Brennan and Morrell. Morell's the guy who put it all together, organized it all. At the urging of Tony Blinken, who was working for the Biden campaign. But when we depose these guys, they're the ones who got this attitude. Like in some ways, they would strike me as like the Klaus guy here. When we depose Brennan and Clapper, the arrogance and the idea that they still think Trump is some like danger. I mean, it's like it's crazy. So those are the guys that I think are a concern. I don't know if they're we got members who come focused on their job, serving their constituents back home, which I think is our primary responsibility. But there are some big interest. We got to make sure our military's.
Who are the bad guys? Who are the real bad guys that you're? No, but I mean specific. The bad guys, not the people that are like. Is Chuck Schumer a bad guy?
I think they're. I always say not all Democrats are crazy, but the left that controls their party is. And the left, I mean, you go down the list of all the crazy policy positions. It's crazy to defund the police. The left believes that, though. It's crazy not to have a border. Left believes that. It's crazy to let non-citizens vote in our election. Left believes that. It's crazy to say men should compete against women in sports. But you could just keep going. So it's the left that controls their party.
Who is for sale? Do you know the people that are for sale? Are there anybody that's for sale that they'll sell America for anything?
I wouldn't put it in that terms. I would just put it in like the political, the energy in the Democrat Party is from the left, and the left has this. I mean, look at what's happened. Look what happened on college campuses with. I mean, you had people protesting in favor of Hamas, for goodness sake. They're terrorists. So, and because of that, you have members of, I think, people in elected position who kind of waffle on their positions on Israel, for goodness sake. It's like, so I think that's the concern. It's the energy in their party is the left, and the left is now in control of their party. So much so that you got members of the Democrat Party saying we're going to go to executive session so no one can hear what RFK Jr. is going to testify to in a hearing on censorship. I mean, that's crazy.
But to me, you could be pro abortion, right? And pro-choice. They call it pro-choice nowadays. And you can make your argument, and maybe you're an atheist. Maybe you're an agnostic. Maybe you're not a Christian. Maybe you're a Scientologist. Like, hey, man, pro-choice. Let the woman decide. But that's what you believe in, right? Maybe you believe in higher taxes. Billionaires don't pay enough money. They don't pay enough taxes. Mm-hmm. Okay, maybe you haven't done research that 80+% of the taxes are being paid by the people that are making money. The bottom 50% pays 4% of all the taxes. The bottom 50% pays 4% of all the taxes. You do a little bit of research and like, oh shit, I didn't know that. I thought they never paid that. So we can have that conversation. But are there people that are evil? Are there people that genuinely are driven by power, and evil tendencies that they're willing to sell their country to somebody else where they're for sale, that China can come and go after them? Is that how it is, or it's just a pure differentiation in policies?
No, I don't think it's treasonous or anything like that. I think there's people who just they believe all the crazy left stuff. I mean, they think even though socialism never worked anywhere it's been tried, somehow it can work here because we're so smart and we'll be in charge, and it'll be the first place it actually is works. I mean, I think naive. They want political power. They think in their particular part of the country that's the right position. So it's politics. It's they believe it. It's all that, but I don't think it's corrupt.
You got 4 kids.
Yeah.
Did you send all of them to college?
They all went to college. Yeah.
Okay, so you know,
all graduated too.
Really? Okay, fantastic. Congrats. So I got 4 kids, and you know, if one of my guys' ex-wives was with me, and we were talking, it's me, him, her, and another couple here, and my wife. And she's like a big AOC fan. She had just come from a rally, and she loved AOC just like 10 years ago. And I said, let me ask you a question. Why do you believe in socialism so much? Are you kidding me? All this money rich people making, look what they're... I said, just out of curiosity, in high school, what was your favorite subject? Oh, journalism and, you know, English. I said, okay. What was your least favorite subject? Oh, I hate math. I'm like, I wonder if the pattern and the profile of somebody that likes the liberal left policies, they're terrible at math. So maybe logic and reason and that is a little bit lower. And by the way, there's a lot of data that proves that what percentage of school teachers give money to the left. 98% of English teachers do. Big. And the lowest one is math teachers.
Yeah, math, 87%. Math, science, engineering,
So your 4 kids that went to school, did they go to any schools that are did they go to like Hillsdale or did they go to Open to?
All Big Ten.
Oh, they went to Big Ten.
Ohio State, Wisconsin, Iowa.
Did any one of them ever go to school and to call you back and say, Dad, you know, I don't know if I disagree with this.
No.
What about, that's never happened.
No, I think it makes a difference too if they're, now our oldest daughter was good high school distance runner, didn't run in college, but our other 3 kids were all college athletes. And so I think part of it is, I think athletes think like conservatives and conservatives. You know, I think there's something about setting the goal, working hard, competition, all the things we talked about before. So both our boys wrestled for the Badgers, and our daughter played. She didn't play particularly well, but she played college golf. She was a pretty good junior player.
So sports.
I think sports are critical.
But I know a lot of liberal athletes.
Well, there's some, but there's a lot of conservative guys. You know, it's certainly in the. I talked to the president yesterday. He brought the Penn State wrestling team up on stage. He was in State College. I called him up. We were laughing because it just was funny that he brought him up there. Maybe we talked about that before, but it's certainly in the wrestling world, they're conservative, and I think a lot of them are.
Rob, last thing before we wrap up, the clip that you just pulled up, what Schumer said on MSNBC. So if you can play this clip here, go ahead.
Solicited pronouncement on the intelligence community. This was his tweet just a little while ago tonight. You see the scare quotes there. The intelligence briefing on so-called Russian hacking was delayed until Friday. Perhaps more time needed to build a case. Very strange. We're actually told, intelligence sources tell NBC News since this tweet has been posted, that actually this intelligence briefing for the president-elect was always planned for Friday. It hasn't been delayed. But he's taking these shots, this antagonism, this taunting to the intelligence community.
You take on the intelligence community, they have 6 ways from Sunday at getting back at you. So even for a practical, supposedly hard-nosed businessman, he's being really dumb to do this.
What do you think the intelligence community would do if they were motivated?
I don't know, but from what I am told,
right there.
They are...
Who's the wrong group to piss off in politics? Is it them?
Well, that is frightening, though, what he said. And I even think it's interesting because Rachel Maddow, for being a lefty and everything, it seemed to me that I remember this because I've talked about this numerous times. The idea that the elected official is saying, if you question the agencies who are supposed to work for the people that are elected by we the people, somehow you're in trouble. That is backwards. That's not how it's supposed. And this is a scary thing. The people who put their name on the ballot, they're the ones who are supposed to be accountable. You don't like what they do, you throw them out of office. Not these unelected people in the intelligence community or the Faucis of the world. That is so wrong. But I remember this, and I talked about this a number of times.
Is this not criminal, though? Is this not criminal?
It's wrong. It's sure wrong. And whether it's the intelligence community, the FBI, the DOJ, the ATF, what the ATF did to this Brian Malinowski down in Little Rock, Arkansas, knocked on him because he sold 6 guns. He's the highest paid official in the Little Rock government, runs the Bill and Hillary Clinton Airport. ATF came to his door pre-dawn, put the sticker on his doorbell cam so they couldn't see. 58 seconds later, he is dead. For a search warrant, just go when he's not there and get the guns or whatever. It's like, this is it right here. This is so wrong what happened here. This is something else we're in the process of investigating. This.
What happened again here? He sold what? You said 6?
He sold 6 guns without an FFL, Federal Firearms License, and he was a gun hobbyist. And the ATF says, oh, you didn't have a license. We're going to come exercise a search warrant, not for him, but for, whatever. Do it when he's not there. Don't come in at 6 a.m. A guy with guns thinks he's being robbed. They 10 cars pulled up. You got to watch the testimony. His lawyer came and testified. Bud. Can
you pull it up, Rob? I didn't know about the story.
But he's a former U.S. attorney who represents the family now. He came and testified. It was powerful. His widow was there. She came and.
Is that it?
No, I don't think that's. It might be. It's such a sad story, and but anyway, that just got me thinking about all these agencies and how they unelected people doing the things they're doing. Yeah, this is it. Bud Cummings. That's right. Former U.S. attorney is representing the family. Mr. Malinowski's wife was there. After the hearing, she came up and hugged me. It's saddest thing, what happened. Yeah, it's troubling.
Are they as, get out of jail card to be able to do stuff like this and not be held accountable? Is that where they're at? The intelligence?
Let's hope not. Let's hope not. And, what we can do is, best way we can begin to change it is 7 days from now on this election and make sure President Trump and Republicans win.
Jim Jordan, this was great. It was great spending time with you. I appreciate you for coming out.
Thank you.
And hopefully we'll do many more of these in the future.
I look forward to it. Thanks for all the good work you're doing.
Absolutely. Appreciate you, Jim. This was great. Fantastic. Take care, everybody. Don't rustle this guy. He's trouble. Take care. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. You're going to think I'm crazy when I tell you this, but the last 13 and a half years, I've been working on my first fiction book to write, ever. Fiction book to write. And while I finished this book, a year ago, I got the strangest phone call about one of the characters in the book where the guy wanted to meet with me and he read the book. And afterwards was like, wait a minute, am I the villain in the book? This is a story about a character named Asher, who is half Armenian, half Assyrian, whose father was involved in the Iranian Revolution, linked to Savak, working with the Shah, that they escape and he gets recruited to a secret society. Well, when you go to the secret society, it's been around for a couple thousand years. They've developed some of the craziest leaders of all time. And they test you. There's unique tests that they have at this society where they test to see your emotional mental toughness. One of the tests that they have is very rigorous. It's purely mental. Of course, there's a physical one, but one is mental and emotional. If you're Armenian, if you're Syrian, if you're Persian, this is a book you're going to be reading and saying, holy moly, this is the kind of stuff you talk about in here? Yes. If you're somebody that's fascinated by history, this is a book for you. Characters. There's a technology that this society, secret society, builds where you go into a vault. I won't spoil it for you. When you go down, they have a technology where you get to sit down and watch and have a 3-4 hour conversation with Tupac. You can set up a debate between Karl Marx and Ayn Rand. Karl Marx is in the book, who wrote Communist Manifesto. Ayn Rand, who wrote Atlas Shrugged, is in the book. Marilyn Monroe explains the concept of seduction and sex in the book. When you read the book, it's about development of the next leaders in the world and how they do it and how they've been doing it for many years. And it's also about how to prevent the end of civilization and how this organization goes about doing it. So, I've never written a parenting book before, but if I ever wrote a parenting book, this is the closest thing to it because it's all mindset, a lot of crazy stories. Again, 13 and a half years. Trust me, I told myself I will not publish this book until I sell my insurance company and I'm fully disconnected from it, where it's no longer my responsibility 100%. When you read this, if you're a creative person, if you like fiction books, if you enjoyed Atlas Shrugged, or if you enjoy Divergent, if you like books like that, I think you're going to enjoy reading this book. It's the creative side. Business books is very easy. Here's how you do it. Here's how this how it works. This is very creative. If you haven't placed the order yet, now you can order it on Simon & Schuster, Amazon. I'm going to put the link up below somewhere here, maybe even in my profile. Go order the book and read it. I've never written a book where I can't wait to read your reviews to see what you think about this book. So I'm going on this wild journey and we have some plans with this book here. If you support the things that I work on, I would appreciate you going and reading the book, order the book on Amazon, and then post a review.